Good afternoon, welcome to H4 Woodworks. My name is Randy. On today's video, I'm going to be making my own personal rendition of this cross. Now this cross is the original design from Matt Outlaw of 731 Woodworks. I'll post a link below to his original build video and also to his free plans. Now, before I get started, I want to talk a little bit about how this video is going to go. And it's a little bit different video than what's my previous videos or some other that you may have seen on YouTube. I'm trying to do some experimentation with my videos, and since I have not the greatest video editing skills or greatest video editor at the moment. So instead of this being an actual build video where you're going to see the cuts, me making the cuts and me making the assembly, it's going to be more of an instructional, informative video where I'm going to talk about each step that I do. Now, because of this video is based off someone else's video and their plans, if you'd like to see that, by all means, go watch the full video there. I'm basically going to be talking about my own personal touches I put to the project. Now that we got that little bit out of the way, let's get back to talking about the cross. So I've made multiple different designs of this cross from using different woods, cedar, pine, various mixtures of hardwoods, including a really nice exotic one, very similar to what's in the video. But this seems to be my most popular design. I call this the Old Rugged Cross. It's made exclusively of 100-plus-year-old barnwood from here in Missouri. I kind of add my own touches to it, but for one reason, I don't know if it's the name, if this is the uniqueness of it, but it's very popular with me. I've sold several of this design, whereas other designs I really haven't. A couple of things about it. As you can see, it's not perfect, it's not straight. I don't intend it to be. When we get over to the saw, you'll see what I'm talking about. I'm not making a whole lot of milling on it. But that's it. I'll work you guys through the process and we'll set up at the saw and we'll get started. Alright, now we're set up here at the saw. Now, as you can see here laid out on top of my saw right now, I already have several pre-cut strips, and we'll talk about that. Now what you want to start out with, or what I start out with, is I have several of these very long, up to 10 feet, pieces of barn paneling. They're about an inch thick, red oak in this case, or they're all red oak that I picked up. Got a lot of patina on them. Also got a lot of uniqueness. Nail holes, there's some rot in places also. So when you're doing stuff like this, you really want to watch for nails. Make sure you remove all the nails out of it. I run a wire brush, like a welder's brush, across it, all the sides, to clean off any kind of debris and asbestos and whatever else may be on it. That being said, make sure that you're wearing a good dust mask when you're cutting this, because this stuff has been sitting on barns and houses and whatnot. So this particular piece here I'm using for something else, so I've got to save aside, but this was just to generally show you what I'm using. Now I'll take the strips and the first cuts that I'll make on the saw. I will set my saw up to 1 inch, making various 1-inch cuts. Now I make usually a big batch because I've got multiple different ways of doing this. So for all intents and purposes, from now on, anything that has this original patina look, I'll call the face. So we cut up, all of these right now are 1-inch cut, or 1-inch faces. Once I get them all cut, the next thing I'll do is I'll start to separate. I'll pick out a few that are 1 inch originally, and then I'll keep them off to the side separate. In this case here, I've got 8 here separated, 4 here. These 8 will get cut down. I'll show you that in a bit. And then also, I have a few pieces, if they've got multiple face sides, these here, I'll save them to the side for later, and I'll show you what I'm doing with those. but they'll set off to their side. So basically, it essentially makes 3 piles. 1-inch faces, these will go off to the side. We won't mess with them yet. Now, one thing else you'll notice that I've already done here, so I've already cut them up, is I'll make some random marks. So if you can see, this has got a nice little curve to it, some deformities, some bad knots. I'm going to mark these out to cut any of these bad spots out. So I'll do that right now, and then we'll come back and I'll set up for our next set of cuts. Our next set of cuts will require us to cut each of the 1-inch pieces, with the exception of the ones that I set aside, down to 7/8 inch wide faces. Once this is done, and this includes all the rest of the pieces, I go through it again, I segregate and find some of the better pieces, and I set them aside. In this case, 3 pieces. So I've set those aside just like the 1-inch. I've also made notes of 7/8 on the boards here and 1-inch on these, so I don't get them confused. We're going to take the rest of the boards that were trimmed down to 7/8, including these ones that have the 3 faces, which I didn't touch any of the 3 faces. I only went with the fresh cut side. We're going to set them aside, and we're going to reset our saw now at 3/4 inch. What's going to happen here is both our 7/8 that we've set aside and our 1-inch we've set aside, we're now going to run them through with a face against the fence and against the blade, making these 3/4 inch thick. And that's what we'll do now. Now come back. Now, we're done trimming them down to 3/4 inch. A couple things I did not mention earlier that you may want to keep in mind. If you notice, I keep a small index card. This is to make notes of all your cuts. So I have my 7/8 boards here that are now trimmed down. As you can see, there's a nice, I've taken off this original patina layer here. I'll set those aside. Same goes for the 1-inch boards. I'll set them aside. Now for now, we're done. We're done with the set. We're done with those here. Now a nice little byproduct of when you trim them down to 3/4 inch, because these are just slightly under 1 inch, some are, is you get these nice little veneer strips of the original patinaed face. Don't throw these away. I save these. And I'll collect these off to the side. This little nasty piece here, you can just snap it off and throw it away if you'd like. I save these little side pieces, and I'll show you what I do with these later when we get to the finishing assembly process. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to drop it down again to a 1/2 inch. Now this is our final set of rip cuts. At a 1/2 inch, everything else we have left is going to be ripped down to this 1/2 inch width. So we'll do that now. All right, now that we're done cutting these down, what we're left with is a 1/2 inch wide by 7/8 inch strips. Now when these here leave you a little bit wider skin strip on the back, but what I'll do is I'll put these off to the side for later, one of those when I'm bored projects, and I'll run through my bandsaw and de-skin them and use them for what I have, what I saved the other 3/4 strips for. But for now, I've got enough skin pieces. I don't need to do that at the moment. So when you're all said and done, now that we're done with the rip cuts, we're going to end up with essentially 4 piles. Pile number 1 is 1 inch face that is 3/4 inch thick. Pile number 2 is 7/8 inch face by 3/4 inch thick. A 7/8 inch face by 1/2 inch thick. And then these 3 over here that are 7/8 by 1/2 that have a little extra face grain patina on them. And I'll show you what these are going to be for in a little while. So now we've got all this set up. Our next step that we're going to do is still going to be on the saw, but I'm going to move my excuse me. I'm going to move my fence out of the way. I'm going to swap out my blade with a 60-tooth cross-cut blade, and I'm going to set my sled up, and then we'll proceed from there. This will be when we get into our actual dimensioning of our different sizes. But right now, this is essentially the mill, all the milling we're going to do on these boards. Now that we're back here, or we're here to the crosscut sled, we'll talk a little bit about the sled real quick. So one of the things, I already have it set up here to make the crosses, is I have this sacrificial piece of plywood here. It's at an exact 45-degree angle, and we'll use that to make our 45 miters. At this moment, we're not going to do the 45 miters right now. What we're going to do now is we're just going to do a series of straight cuts. So we have, make a giant mess right there. We have our stop block set up, and we're going to make 2 cuts at 20 inches, 2 cuts at 13 3/8 inches, 2 at 11, and 2 at 9. And these will just be straight cuts blocked up against our stop block. After those cuts are made, then we'll proceed with making dados to do our half laps. Now, as you'll notice a couple things about this sled, you notice I've already got a series of marks pre-marked on here at different lengths. Makes a quick reference since I use this sled predominantly for making these crosses. Now, to get ready to make the half laps and half joints, I've made a set of essentially jigs. This first jig here is for the 20 inch, the 7/8 by 3/4 inch piece that will be made to 20 inches. And it will be set up this way. I'll take my 1 stop block, I'll shift it down on this end, bring it out to my blade, butt it up against to find my spot. Set my stop block, lock it in place. I'll grab another piece of sacrificial board here, and I'll slide it back until my blade contacts the other side of this opening. Lock the stop block now. Now, that gives me my start and stop points for my dados. All the way against this stop block, make a pass. Back against the next stop block, make a pass. And then all I have to do is just nibble away until I get back to this block. Now you can do this with a dado stack also if you have that method. It would be a lot quicker, just 1 pass and be done. That requires you to still set up some sort of stop block and a special sled. In my case, I'll just nibble away at it until I get it where I want it. and get it fitted. This is the other cross member, 7/8 by 3/4 by 9, or excuse me, by 11. And it will essentially the same principle. Line it up, set my stop block where up against it. Move my next stop block back down. Set it, and now I'm ready to go, left to right. Height-wise, right now these are set a little high, or excuse me, a little shallow. So as I'll set my depth, I'll nibble at it until it comes all the way down and flushes up. Now I've already made a pass already, and I'll also do the same for the 1/2 by 7/8. Same principle. I've already made my cuts on a few pieces, and this is the end result. You have your one cross member, just like so. And your other part of your cross, just like so. 2 pieces. Lock over, nice flush. You end up with the perfect cross. Then all you have to do is glue these 2 pieces together, and that forms your base layer. We'll also make the smaller one where we utilize these 1.5 by 2" pieces, same principle. And it'll be our final top layer. And that is it. That is the cross essentially that we'll be making. And then everything after that, we'll be using the miters and our stop block. Now we're down to the fun stuff. This is going to be our miter cuts to make our multiple pieces. So what we're going to do here is the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our 1" by 3/4 pieces. Doesn't matter how long as it's 1" wide, 1" face, 3/4 thick. The way you're going to do this, set it up against your sacrificial little stop block here. I like to take it just slightly over, and then you'll make your first pass over the blade. Cut it off. You're going to be left with perfect 90-degree miter. You see right there how it's going to look, flushed right up against the blade. Now be aware, whenever you do this, you're going to get a lot of these little triangular pieces here. It's just going to accumulate all over your floor. So be aware if you're walking around with not the best shoes on, or it could be a potential little slip hazard. Just be aware of that. Now once that first 45 is cut, keep in mind which side you put face up first. Whether it's the patina side or the smoother, the cut side. You need to remember that on your next cut. Then we're going to, after we make the 45, we're going to rotate it. Spin it around. I like to set it pointed in like this, right up against the stop block. Make your next pass. Cut it, boom. Your cutoff in, set it off to the side. Now, whichever side you started with, if you started with the patina side up, your next cut, you want the cut side up. And you'll have basically another straight edge piece. Same principle. Set it over, pass it through, flip it, cut it. Now, depending on how many you need, is how many we'll make. I am not going to need any more of these. I'm going to make 2 of these in this size. Then the next you're going to do is you're going to bring it down to 4.5 inches. Repeat. What you'll end up with is a 4.5 inch piece, 1 inch, 3/4, 4.5 inches on the long face, 45 degree. In this case, I'm going to make 6 of these, or you'll need 6 of these. So 2 at 45, 1 inch, 3/4 by 13 1/8. 6, 1 inch, 3/4 by 4.5 inches. You can go back and reset your stop block. This time you're going to set it at 8 inches. Now you're going to take your 1/2 inch thick ones, repeat the same process. Over and cut. Till you end up with 7/8, 1/2 inch by 8 inches. And you're going to go with 4 of these. After you're done with that, you'll repeat the process, except you're going to end up with 2.5 inch pieces. 7/8, 1/2 inch, 2.5. 6 each. So 2, 6, 2, and 6. Now, I will run this through, so we'll get a little loud. Now, see we have 2 pieces cut here. Assortment of the smallers cut here. And that's it. And then we'll run through and we'll make the rest of these cuts. But that's essentially the rest of our miter cuts. So I'll go through and I'll continue to make the rest of the cuts that are needed, and we will proceed. All right, now we'll get on with the assembly. So we're going to start with our base layer cross. Now this is the one that we made earlier with the half lap joints. So you can see this is what the final product looks like. I set it up so that all the faces have the patinaed look, and I'll show you my false patina trick when we do the others. And in the back is the exposed fresh cut side. Now, full disclosure, I'm using my workbench that I don't typically use. That's the reason the piece for the cardboard. Keeps the glue off. So we'll start with our base layer, and I'll just set it off to the side. The next thing we're going to have are 2 of these 13 3/8 inch pieces that will go right up against the side as such. 6 each of these 4 3/8 pieces that'll butt up against the rest of the cross. Like such. Then we'll have 2 of these 8-inch cross pieces. They'll sit right on top. And 6 of these 2.5-inch pieces that will rest right up against them as such. And then on top, this is one of the outer crosses, or the top layer cross will sit right down in the middle, like so. And that's essentially the build sequence. So we'll go through here kind of step by step briefly, showing each of these steps of how it's going to work. Now a little edge banding trick that I typically use. You can kind of see it here, you can see it on the cross here. If not, you get this look. If you don't put it on here, you can get this clean look. It's not bad. Maybe certain people like taste. Me personally, I like this overall look like it was designed this way, I guess. So we'll take, for just demonstration purposes, we'll take this longer 13.5-inch or 13 3/8 piece and 4 3/8 piece. Now we're all going to edge band this flat or short side. We'll leave the long side as the original exposed. Gives us a good gluing surface to glue on. Same goes for the short. We'll only do the short sides that are exposed out. So we'll take a piece here. I've already got some that are pre-cut. These are the longer strips here. And this is basically what we'll set them up on here, make my cuts and trims. As you can see, example here, how it overhangs, and I'll show you that here in a minute. So let's go ahead and just do the glue up first. I'm using just regular Type Bond tube. Just run me a bead down it. Doesn't have to be pretty. I'll just place it right here as such on it. I use these spring clamps, works pretty good. I'll just line the one side up, clamp it. I usually just try to find the most exposed patina side to line it up with. And that is essentially what we'll end up with. I'll take me a piece of an old paper towel and just wipe off the excess glue. And then we'll set this to the side and let it dry. We'll do the same here. I'll grab two. Same scenario. And again, that's what we ended up with. We'll set it off to the side. We'll let that set in glue. Now once the glue's dry, then we ended up with something like this, where we left over the overhang. Same goes for here. Now I just have a pair of these little shears here. I also have another pair of scissors. It doesn't really matter. Preferably something that's really sharp, and these are very sharp. A little small cut on my finger a while back. And I'll just go through and I'll just trim this excess off. Same goes for here. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to come back and fix this when we're done. Now we have that little bit of edge cut off. Go off a little bit more on that. As I throw my scissors on the floor. There we go. Now when that's done, after I get them all cut up, I'll take my sander here. I've just got a piece of 60 grit sandpaper. If you have a benchtop sander, you can do this just as fine. I unfortunately don't have a benchtop sander at the moment. But what I basically did is take that edge off, and you're ended up with a nice flat surface. And then one other thing I'll do here is I'll take it over. Keep dropping stuff, I tell you. I'll take it over to my table saw. See, it's got a little lip, and I'll run it back through my miter gate, or through the miter, and get it trimmed up nice and even. Now, with that being done on the uppers, now I'm ready for glue up. So normally I'll do these two at a time, but for demonstration purposes, I'm only going to do the one now since the others didn't glue up. I'll get a couple more of these clamps. Should have these already pre-staged, but sorry. Same principle. One thing I want to do here is set it all the way up against here, and then make sure it's lined up as flush as I can get it on the back. Just like so. And then I'll bring this piece up, flush it up best I can. There we go. Thing, and then just go down the line here. That's going to work. All right. Now, again, same thing. Go back through, take my rag, kind of clean up the excess glue off of this. And there we have it. And we'll set there, and we'll, normally, like I said, I'll do two sides here, and I'll do it all the way around, get it all glued up, and then we can move on to the next step. Okay, now while the other is gluing up, we're going to talk a little bit about a couple of other steps that's going to go into this. So this is obviously a completed one. So our next step is going to be to add this cross here, which consists of these smaller 8-inch and 2.5-inch pieces. Now they're going to be glued down the back and glued right on to the longer 1-inch pieces that we're just now gluing up. Now one little trick I like to do here, because you may not see it and this may just be a technicality, but there's a small, sits up above this little bit of a ledge so you can kind of see the end caps here. Basically the back side of this. A little bit of exposed. So what I like to do here is just take a little bit. I have a mixture here. It's weathered oak and dark walnut. It's 3 parts weathered oak and like 1 little part of special walnut. And I'll just take a little bit of dip, just very little. Don't need a whole lot. This is just kind of my little pan container here. And I'll just lightly brush it on the long edge and the tail end. And then just take an old rag and just kind of wipe it off real quick. Just let it set for just a few minutes and wipe it off. Kind of gives it that little roughed up, darker patina look. Now you could theoretically do this too. I'm going to throw this disclaimer out there. If you wanted to and save, the extra work and just paint any exposed sides you have. Now what I'll end up doing is going behind, as you can see on this one, and I'll paint the whole back that way. And it somewhat matches the front. Obviously it's still fresh cut, but that's that. And then once these sections are glued down, then I'll come along and I'll add this uppermost center cross, line it up right down inside of this. And that's what you get. And then at the end, I have these small hooks here. I got them from Home Depot. I'll drop it. These are them right here. S&M small ready screws. And they'll screw them. You can do whatever you want, but this is what I do. Adds it on there, and that's like my final touch. And essentially that's it. That's how this comes to be. So you have finally overall, you have your base cross, your 2 outer crosses, your inner cross, and your uppermost cross. And that's it. That's the quick and dirty of it. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like below and subscribe for future content. I do have another video that'll be coming out probably in a week or so. I'm going to be working on some rustic coffee tables. So it'll be, again, neat thing about it's going to be cherry on the frame, and it will be utilizing this same wood, this old barn wood for the tops and for a shelf underneath. So I made a similar one already, and look forward to making some more. So hope you enjoyed, and thanks again.